All right, good morning. It's middle of the week already. Having Monday off kind of makes you feel like it should still be like Tuesday or something, but we're almost home free. Friday's almost here, right? So hope you had a great day yesterday. We after work we went up to the farm and checked on all the animals, gathered some vegetables from the garden, and made our way down to meet a young couple friend of ours who's looking at a house, and we wanted to look at it with them and help think through the process of what's going on there. And then we stopped back by one of our widows who's had some just hip issues and all of that. And so went by and hung out with her last evening and came home, got up this morning and ready to go. So hope your night was good and you got some good rest. So we are in the Gospel of Mark, and we are in chapter 15, and we have now reached the crucifixion. So this is where we are in our story, and I don't want to kind of drag you back through, although it's an incredible story, all that transpired to this place. You remember yesterday we journeyed with Simon as he was enlisted by the Romans to carry the cross of Jesus outside the city gates to the place called Golgotha. And so that's where we pick up the story today. I just remind you that our Savior, Jesus, the Messiah, has been up all night. He had celebrated. It seems like it's been a long deal, but he had taught them much about the end times. They had prepared a place for the Last Supper. Or for them, it truly was the Last Supper, but it was also Passover. And so on this Thursday evening, they've celebrated the Passover. Judas has gone out to betray him. They have sung some hymns that he has washed their feet. He has told them about the sufferings that were to come. They went out into the garden. He prayed on three separate occasions while the disciples, the apostles rather, fell asleep during their time of prayer when he said, hey, watch that you don't enter into temptation. And then at the end of his prayer, he wakes them up. Here come the guards, probably 600-700 people at least, make their way into the Garden of Gethsemane to arrest Jesus. There's a ruckus that takes place there. Everybody scatters, but John and Peter follow him to the palace where he's taken to Annas' house. He's tried before Annas and then his son-in-law Caiaphas. He's walked a few blocks down to Pilate's house. He's gone a few blocks other to Herod's house, back to Pilate's house, beaten, scourged, and pummeled in the face and mocked. And then they took him to the Praetorium, where the cohort of soldiers, 600 of them, again have gathered. They've beat him. They've mocked him. They've, put a robe and crown of thorns on him, shoved it into his head. and now the journey begins for Jesus to carry his cross outside the gate to the place in which they would crucify him. So that's how that worked. And Jesus, under great duress because of the beating that not everyone received, but he did. So his back, if you remember, we said that it was 39 lashes with that whip that has torn open the skin. So it's ripped his flesh, it's ripped the muscles, it's gone to the arteries themselves, and there's a bleeding out thing that's taking place. So he is in immense pain. He has the beatings, the ripping of the beard out. I want to over dramatize that. I just want you to get the flair for what's taking place. So now he has the task of carrying this long wooden beam up to the place in which they're going to crucify him. And so he's struggling. It's not as fast as they want him to go. I think they're afraid the crowd could turn on him or against them and for him because of the brutality that's taking place. So they bring Simon in, whose sons Rufus and Alexander. We told you about that. He's from Cyrene. It won't be too much longer after all of this that Simon will have gone back to Cyrene. Apparently, he would have come to Christ and understood that the cross in which he carried was the cross of the one who died for his sins. His son Rufus becomes a major player in the church in Rome. And so it's a fascinating story. So we get ourselves now to Golgotha, and that's where we pick the story up. It says, a certain man from Cyrene, I'm going to read the verse we looked at yesterday, ended, Simon, the father of Alexander and Rufus, was passing by on his way in from the country, and they forced him to carry the cross. They brought Jesus to the place called Golgotha, which means place of the skull. There's a lot of myth about what this was. Most scholars say it's because it had the look of a skull, the mountainside. Others say it's because that's where they would toss the skulls of those who were crucified. You can take your pick, but it's called Golgotha. Now, we get our term Calvary from that because when you transcribe Golgotha from Aramaic into Latin or Greek, it comes out Calvary. And so this is where we get our term Calvary, right? So that's where he is. And let's just pick up the story. We're just going to read through it today and just see what we can see. So it says they brought Jesus to a place called Golgotha, which means the place of the skull. Then they offered him wine mixed with myrrh, but he did not take it. So in the midst of all of this brutality, they wanted, I guess it's their one tip of the hat toward some sympathy. So they would give those who were being crucified some wine mixed with myrrh to kind of dull their senses so the pain wouldn't be so excruciating. Some said that it actually would have prolonged the death, that the sheer shock of everything would have killed them quicker. And so, they loved the torture aspect. So you take your pick as to whether it was sympathy or it was to prolong the death and the suffering. But at any rate, that's what was taking place. Now, the scripture says that in Psalm 69, so about 1,000 years before this, the psalmist says that he will be offered that. So this is an amazing understanding of the sovereignty of God, that he sees life not like we see it in sequences in the events. He sees it from time past to time eternity. And he sees everything as though he were looking at it right now, real time. And so when he encourages David to write that psalm 1,000 years before, it was already as though this event were happening in the mind of God. And so this is where we find ourselves. Now, the crucifixion is a slow death, and it's meant to be that. It's reserved for the worst of the worst criminals. This was invented years ago, crucifixion, and had been carried forth up until the present day here. And it's a brutal form. So you imagine Jesus with his shredded back is now laid on the cross timbers that we know of in the traditional cross sense. And so just the sheer touch of his back against that raw wood would have sent pain searingly so throughout his whole body. They then extend the hands, cross the feet, drive a spike. We call them a nail, but it's really a spike. It's probably a ½ inch at least in diameter that they slam through the wrists and then through both feet. So you can imagine the pain, the excruciating aspect of that. Now, to raise up, it was the only way that you could breathe. Crucifixion is death by suffocation. So your body is always struggling to get breath. And every time you do, you're feeling the weight of those, let me get my hand over there, of those here pulling up on those bones, and the same thing in the feet. Not to mention the fact of the back having to scrape across that, the shredded back having to scrape across that wood. This is what he endured. Also the crown of thorns and all of the other pain that's there with him. And so it says they offered him that wine, and then they said they crucified him, dividing up his clothes. They cast lots to see what each other would get. So this is where so they crucified him, and we're going to learn later they crucify him between two thieves. This is the point that Mark doesn't record, but this is the point that Luke records, that as they are driving the nails in his hand or setting the cross up in its place, that he says, "Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing." Now, he's saying that to the crowd that is around him. He may mean it to everyone, the Jews as well, but at least it's to these 6 soldiers who, or 4 rather, who have gathered around him to do this issue. Now, the chief priests and all the others have followed out there. They all want to witness what's going on. It is on a roadway. So, and it was meant to be that. It meant to be an intimidating factor from Rome to say, behave as you enter our cities, or this is what will happen to you. And so it was common as those people would walk by, they could see who the person was, what his crime was, and they would just laugh at them, mock them, because I told you that was kind of the culture of what they did. And so then it says that they divided up his clothes. John adds the fact that this was a rather unique robe because there were no seams in it. It was a seamless robe, and they didn't want to divide it up like they would do all the others because it would have ripped in places that they didn't want it. So they cast lots to see who's going to get the whole enchilada, so to speak. And that too was so that Scripture would be fulfilled in Psalm 22, that they divided his clothes. It's amazing to me, and I want to drive this home to you, of a sovereign God who sent his son to die on that cross. While the Jews will endure the wrath of what they did, and the Romans for allowing it to happen, it was God himself who determined that this was the only way that you and me would escape the corruption of our sin and the total devastation and depravity that is within us. None of us have the capacity to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps and save ourselves, for we are sinful people, unholy, and fully depraved. And so, now that doesn't mean that we'll sin every sin we can, but the capacity to sin every sin is there within us. And so only Christ could remedy this. And so this is what's taking place. But it was done so that the Scriptures would be fulfilled. Now, then it says, and they crucified him, verse 24, dividing his clothes up. They cast lots to see what each would get. Then it says it was 9 a.m. when they crucified him. So we're talking about he has been up for well over 24 hours. He probably was that early riser for most of the deal. He's up before the sun. So assuming he's up at 5, he's 28 hours now without any sleep, and he is just beginning his to endure for the next 6 hours this torture that we know as the crucifixion. So it says in verse 25, it was 9 a.m. when they crucified him. The written notice of the charge against him read, "The King of the Jews." So that I love how succinct Mark is with that. Now, if we piece together all of the others, it literally says that Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. That's what it says. Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. Now, it's written in 3 different languages so that all who pass by could see it. And that was common, that you would have that placard above the head so that people could see what the crime was. Now, the 9 o'clock was to rush it because they wanted to, the Jews did, to have him dead before sundown. So if they'd waited much longer, the sun would have set and they would be violating the Sabbath. The sheer idiocy of their rule keeping is amazing and astounding. Now, about this event, Isaiah 53 speaks of this crucifixion. Zechariah speaks of this very act of the crucifixion here. So you've got something where God wrote 1,000 years before in the Psalms, and then 750 years with Isaiah, or 700, and then 550 years before through Zechariah. And so this is now the clock was set because God himself wanted to crucify or sacrifice his lamb at approximately 3 o'clock, which in the culture of that day, in the temple, all of the sacrificial lambs would be being slain at that moment as well. So don't miss the typology of all of this and what's going on, because this is exactly what it is. They're busy sacrificing their lambs to find forgiveness of their sins for 1 year. And the once-for-all sacrifice at the same moment, just outside the gate, is being sacrificed for all sin for all time. And so this is what's taking place there. Now we get to verse 26, and it says, the written notice, of the charge against him read, the King of the Jews. Now, John says that the chief priests came up to the soldiers and said, or to Pilate when they saw it, and said, don't write that he was the King of the Jews. Write that he said he was the King of the Jews. They didn't want it up there that he was their king. They wanted to say, no, the man was a fool. He was an idiot, and he thought he was king. And Pilate says, I have written what I have written. So now we come to verse 27 and 28. And it says, they crucified two rebels with him, one on his right and one on his left. So he is in the middle. That was probably the place reserved for Barabbas, but Jesus took that spot. And his cross was in no way probably any higher than the others. We like to paint the pictures of that, but really he was just crucified among the common. So there would have been no, hey, let's raise his up more than the others. It's just, he's just there. He's being crucified. And so it says that he was crucified between two robbers. Those who passed by hurled insults at him and all of that. Now, Isaiah said in chapter 53, verse 12, that he would be crucified between these two robbers. Now, I want to read to you a section at the end of this to kind of give you a little more understanding of that. But let's continue on to 29 through 32 is really what's happening over the next 6 hours, if you will. From 12 to 3, it's going to get utterly dark, and so there's probably a little less mockery and trying to figure out what is going on. But so at least from 9 to 12, this is what we see happening. Those who passed by hurled insults at him, shaking their heads and saying, so you're going to destroy the temple and build it in 3 days? Come down from the cross and save yourself. And so there's this mocking because they had heard this. So the chief priests and everyone who was coming and going, the Sanhedrin, the Pharisees, all of those people coming and going would have been mocking him. The King of Kings, the one who came selflessly to redeem us, to give us freedom from the captivity of sin, they're mocking. In the same way, the chief priests and the teachers of the law mocked him among themselves. He saved others, but he can't save himself. Man, this is their light to shine. They have no idea. Because do you remember, Jesus says it won't be as much on you, Pilate, as it will be on them. It would be better that a millstone were tied around their neck and cast into the sea than to be one of these chief priests who is saying the things that they're saying here. For they should know better. They are the keepers of the Scriptures. They are the ones who are have been entrusted to uphold the Scriptures, and they are abusing the Scriptures. Then verse 32, let this Messiah, the King of Israel, come down from the cross that we may see and believe. Oh, we want to believe, so show us some miracle. Do your little dance for us. This is what they're saying. Those crucified him also heaped insults on him. So he's getting it from the strangers that passed by. He's getting it from the chief priests who are extracting their revenge out of envy for him. The soldiers are mocking him just because they love the mockery. And then you've got the thieves on the cross are going, look at him, he's nobody. Right? This is what's taking place. Now, this is where we end our deal today. But I do want to read to you because it's the fascinating story that Mark doesn't tell, and I want to read it to you. During those hours of all that's going on, both thieves are mocking him. Something happens to one of them, whether because Jesus said very little words. Father, forgive them is all he has said at this point. But one of the thieves begins to have a change of heart. Either it's because he sees the humility of Christ on that cross. He sees the love emanating in his prayer that God would forgive those people who are doing this against him. Or whatever it was that transpired, one of the thieves' heart begins to twist in a good way. And so Luke records it. One of the criminals who hung there hurled insults at him. Aren't you the Messiah? Save us all. But the other criminal rebuked him. Don't you fear God, he said? Since you and I are under the same sentence, we're punished justly. Hey, we did what we're getting crucified for. We're getting what we deserve. But this man has done nothing wrong. What a powerful statement. No, all the keepers of the law wouldn't make that statement, but a common thief saw in Jesus what everyone else refused to see. And then he said this to Jesus: Jesus, remember me. You come into your kingdom. That's not mockery. That's a man that says, I believe you are the King of the Jews. And so when you come into that kingdom, now listen, Romans believed in life after death in a different sort of way. So I'm not saying he understood exactly what was going on, but he did know this. He knew he was the King of Kings. He knew that this man, having heard, he must have heard all the stories of people passing by. As much as the mockery was going on, we have to assume that there were some women there, because the scripture says they were, that would have been talking about him in great favorable light. And so whatever was going on, God was working in this thief so that when he looks at him, he says, you are king and you do have a kingdom. And when you come in that kingdom, don't forget me. I love this answer. Jesus answered, truly, like you can bet on it. You can count on it. Take it to the bank, my fellow crucifier. I tell you today, you will be with me in paradise. Wow. I wish we had time to talk more about that, but I love that twist and all of that. There is a man at the dying of Jesus who finds life as he is dying, just like you and I all do. All right, again, I've kept you too long. Man, Lord bless you guys. Lord willing, I'll see you in the morning, and we'll finish the crucifixion up. Until then, man, you rock the day today. All right, love you guys.